It's 2011 and I just graduated from the University of Houston. Go Coogs. I'm bright-eyed, I'm bushy-tailed, and I'm scared out of my mind. It's my first day at a large retail company as an HR manager. And since I'm an executive team lead, there's a big orientation with all the other executive team leads in the region. At 20 years old, I'm easily one of the youngest managers in the company. I look around the room and I see folks way older than me and seemingly much more comfortable in their own skin. I should be excited. I should be thankful. I should be happy. Instead, I only have one statement seared in my mind. First a whisper, then finally a firm, clear assertion. I don't belong here. This is Zach, and you're listening to Live in Corporate. So today we're talking about imposter syndrome. A 2008 HBR article defines it as a collection of feelings of inadequacy that persist despite evident success. Ade, can you relate to that?
Absolutely. On our website, which y'all should check out, by the way, there is a quick little blurb about the fact that I'm an aspiring software engineer. I knew nothing about code before I started exploring it, and I can't tell you the number of times I sat in a room and I was like, okay, I heard the words that came out of your mouth, and I'm pretty certain they were in English, but I could not tell you for the life of me what they meant together. And there's just this repeated feeling of I'm in the wrong room. You know, have you ever had that dream of everybody around you can see you naked and you're not aware until you look down and you realize, oh crap, they're laughing at me. Yeah. And so just that repeated feeling of I'm in the wrong room and everybody can see it. And also in like my own regular, my current job, my current position, I'm always feeling like I'm always hesitant to answer questions, even though I know the answer to them, because I'm often either the youngest person in the room or the least experienced, etc. And I find that despite how confident I might be when it's just me, and I know that I've done my homework and I know that I've done all the background necessary, I always find myself like second guessing myself for that one brief split second. And sometimes that's just the difference between somebody else getting the position or somebody else getting the accolade for something that I already knew the answer to.
Now that's so real. I know for me, like just speaking for myself, I know that there's been multiple times where I know that I've done the research. I know I've done the homework. I know that I've done everything that's called for me to do. And yet when I get in those rooms or I have those moments, there's always like this sneaky thing where I'm like, I really don't like this whole thing is a sham, right? Like where I feel as if like at any moment, like they're going to pull back the curtain, just kind of like in Wizard of Oz, like at the end, that was a great and powerful Oz. And then you look behind the sheet and it's like just a regular dude. And I know for me, like that's a genuine feeling of mine, right? Like it's, I know that this is a relevant topic because even like on Fishbowl, which is like for those who don't know, listening in, Fishbowl is an anonymous posting app. Essentially, like think like Twitter, but there's no usernames, no nothing. It's completely anonymous. And even when we look across, like even when you just look at Fishbowl, which I would say the predominant number of users are white folks, like they talk about this all the time. And like it leads to all types of, it's the source of so many different types of stresses and frustrations for them. They'll talk about like, you know, man, I'm really depressed. I don't feel like I belong here. Or, you know, I really just feel as if anyone's going to find me out. I really don't feel like I know what I'm doing and everyone else is an expert and so on and so forth. I mean, I've seen people who are like engagement managers and partners and directors post things like that, right? And so I don't feel like it's necessarily something that's so isolated to me or definitely to you, Ade. And I know you've done some research on this. You know, what insights can you share about how common or uncommon the feeling of being an imposter or just how common or uncommon imposter syndrome is?
It's incredibly common. So we found research that suggests that up to 70% of people in professional settings report having felt some sort of anxiety related to imposter syndrome. And I know I've done research back in my graduate days on particularly students of color and their feelings of self-efficacy in school settings, but I didn't really find any that spoke to the experiences of underrepresented groups in corporate America, which, you know, duh. And I would venture to say that the percentages of those particular groups are higher for people who are already one of the few, or you find yourself being the only black person, the only black woman, the only gay person, or the onlys in the room. And I've always wondered what it must be like for people of color to climb any corporate ladder, because the higher you go, the less there are of us.
Straight up. No, you're absolutely right. I mean, I definitely agree. When you look at the data, and I definitely reviewed the research that you shared, and thank you for that. It didn't break it down by the onlys in the room to the language that you use. It didn't break it down by, how present that feeling must be for the only black woman or the only first generation immigrant, or like how much stronger those feelings must be. Because for me, when I think about imposter syndrome, I think about the fact that not only do I feel like this, but there's no one around who looks like me who I can actually have a conversation with either. So I feel like doubly alone. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Trust, I do. I mean, it would be great if we had a guest who could speak on their experiences. I mean, they would need to be like, I don't know, an executive at a couple of Fortune 50 companies. It'd also be the dope if they wrote an Amazon bestseller or were a successful entrepreneur.
Oh, you mean like our first guest of the pod, Fenoris Pearson?
What?
What? So listen, sound man, when you listen to this where you got to put the Jamaican air horns. All right.
Yeah. All right. So next, we're going to get into our interview with the first guest of our pod, Fenoris Pearson.
Hey, y'all, we're back. And as Ade said, we have Fenoris Pearson on the show. Fenoris, welcome to Living Corporate's first official show. You're kicking us off, sir. How does it feel?
Feels great, man. Excited. I'm excited to be a part of this this groundbreaking podcast show.
I appreciate it, man. So, and look, now you and I have a history. We've worked together. You've been a mentor of mine for years. But for those who don't know you, would you mind sharing a little bit of your story about let's just start about how you got into corporate America?
Absolutely. So I grew up in a family of 10, 7 boys, 3 girls. Grew up in the projects, first one and the only one to get a degree, and certainly a postgraduate degree in business and organizational development. I always inspired, even though I was a pretty good athlete. I was a Division I scholarship athlete, student athlete, a lot of success in basketball. Always inspired. I was inspired to be a businessman. So I graduated and moved into corporate America. I always believed in myself, but I know God has always provided favor for me throughout my life. So as I entered into corporate America, it was one of those things where I had goals. I had certain aspirations to get to certain things, but more important than anything, I wanted to not lose myself as who I am and who I was as an individual. As I aspired and as I transitioned into bigger roles and bigger responsibilities throughout corporate. So I became, at the age of 38, the youngest senior vice president, African American executive in the country at that time. I was working at Motorola. I became the senior vice president of organizational development in Motorola. Had over 300 some employees that worked for me around the world, and that was after. At that time, I was probably in my I was 38, but I had probably been with Motorola for about 6, 7 years. Ended up transitioning from Motorola to go and work for Dell, and I worked for the number 2 man at Dell, who reported into Michael Dell, the founder of Dell. And that was a huge experience as well too. So before the age of 40, I was part of two Fortune 50 companies that I was a senior level executive in 2 of the biggest companies in the world before the age of 40. So getting there was an interesting journey to the point where it inspired me to write a book. The book was called How to Play the Game at the Top. And that was inspired and by a conversation that I had with one of the most senior executives in the world. This guy was the founder and the visionary of a phone called the Razor. Many of you out there may recall this phone. It was the thin, sleek, they call it the Razor, and it was one of the iconic phones of its time. And I was part of the leadership team, the executive leadership team that developed and put that phone out in the market. So am I hitting on what you want to talk about, Zach?
Absolutely. This is exactly what I wanted to talk about. I wanted to hear essentially how you got here. So your story that you're sharing, it answers that question. So absolutely, I'm curious. You're talking about these experiences, and you're working for these individuals and working at extremely senior levels. Was there ever like one specific moment that you realized, like, wow, wait a minute, I'm in rarefied air here. Like this is a special position. Like was there a specific moment?
Yeah, there was two moments that I recall that like wow, okay. There were two distinct different learnings from them. The first learning was about standing up and sticking true to who you are from a particularly from a male and from a man perspective, and just about your character, who you are, and what you stand for, and in the face of people who have millions of dollars, et cetera, et cetera. And part B of that story is there's a woman that I had hired. She was from Kellogg. She is a graduate from Kellogg, Northwestern Kellogg School of Business Management, and I brought her on board as a director. But she was extremely qualified, but she happens to be a minority. She happens to be a female African American, and her and I at one point were visiting. We were taking on a restructuring of a 14, $15 billion business. And so my job was to begin to do an org diagnostic and assessment of the strengths, the weaknesses, what's working, what's not working, typical diagnostic stuff. And this young woman was part of the team that I would take in, and we would go and sit down and discuss with an executive. And one particular executive really was not feeling the time that we had set aside and that we had documented, that this is when we're going to meet, this is the nature of this conversation, this is what we're going to be trying to accomplish with you during this time. So it was two of us, myself and this young female who was extremely qualified and competent. And so we get into the office, and this man, for whatever reason, is in a bad mood. And he apparently had just got back from Europe, over in London, was tired, but he was very rude to us. And he was extremely rude to me in front of this young African American female. And the better, calmer nature of me decided to handle this individual in a professional way. Because the decision that I had to make was, what's more important? Do I continue with trying to move forward with doing this, my job, or do I sit here and let this young female who who I just hired watch me kowtow and belittle myself and lose sense of who I am as a man, forget my job, forget my responsibility just as a man, and have this young woman forever look at me as a senior African? Oh, so this is what you have to do in order to be an executive in corporate America. I made a decision at that time that at no point would I allow this woman's memory to be as a man and as an executive that accepted such disrespect from this senior executive that was sitting across the table from me. So I said to him, and I said to her, I started off, I said, sir, if this is not a good time, shall we can come back and continue this interview? And he's like, no, this is a good time. It's a good time. I said, well, it doesn't appear to be, because I'm feeling some tension here. And then so I asked this young woman, I said, you know what, could you excuse us? Could you excuse us? And I said her name, and he said, no, she can stay here. I said, no, she's my direct report, and I'm requesting that she excuse herself from this conversation. And so as she excused herself from this conversation, I looked at him. I got up on the edge of my seat and I looked at him across the table. And I said to him, I said, you and I both know, sir, if you and I were outside of this organization, there is no way you would approach me like this because you would be fearful. Okay. I'm 6'7", okay, tall, sexy, okay, and he's about he's about 6 feet, okay, and so my whole point to him was that that you wouldn't dare approach me in this matter, and I'm not going to let this young woman's memory be of me as a man and me as a senior executive that happens to be a man of color, someone that was just allowed himself to be treated with such disrespect. Okay, so that moment, Zach, was a moment that changed my career because at this point I was a vice president of a business unit, but not of the entire corporation. Okay, and so at this moment, this man changed his attitude, kind of backpedaled a little bit. I asked the young woman to come back in, and we continued the interview. Now, the second aspect that I talked to you about that changed when I realized I was in rarefied air as an executive in corporate America was when 2 days later, this man calls me up. And I'm like, oh crap. Okay, he's gonna be on some Caucasian man stuff, and he's gonna exert his power. He's gonna exert his authority, and you know what? I may get fired. Okay, all right, so cool. All right, so I had made a decision. At the time, I decided to address him, and I decided to ask this young woman to leave the room. That I was willing to suffer any consequence for the sake of keeping my dignity. My mom used to always say, "If you don't fall, you fall for. If you don't fall for something, you fall for anything." And I wasn't about to fall for having him berate me, and more importantly, have this last impression of this young woman who's at the beginning of her career, thinking that she has to, or she has to be a certain way besides just being who she is in order to be successful in corporate America.
Right, right.
Little did I know that when this call came, the call was totally the opposite of what I thought this call was. And so he asked me, he said, so first of all, his assistant called my assistant, and the assistant asked me, did ask my assistant that was I available? I said yes. I picked up the phone, and he said, so interesting conversation, Fanaris. He didn't say Fanoris, that's my name, but he said Fanaris. I never forget it.
Bananas.
Yeah, like
Okay.
interesting conversation with you, Fanaris. So here's what I want to do. I want you to go on a trip with me. Okay. And so I'm like, what do you mean go on a trip? Like, so tomorrow we had Motorola, we had all these corporate jets. And so we had these corporate jets that me as a kid growing up in the projects only dreamt about. Okay. And so being on a corporate jet, certainly I've been on commercial airplanes, but I've never been on my own private jet. And so he asked me to meet him at our hangar where we keep all our corporate jets at, and outside of Chicago. The Motorola's where the corporate headquarters are at in Chicago. And so I met him there. And I was needed to say is a lot transpired between the time of him asking me to meet him there and the conversation that we had on the phone. But I'm thinking when I get there, it's going to be a group of people um, that's we're going out to Sunnyvale, California. He was, little did I know at the time that he called me, he had just got promoted to be the president, the number two person, and pretty much that's running Motorola. He had just got promoted, but at that time on the phone call, I didn't know it. So when I get there at the hangar, I'm thinking it's going to be a bunch of other people that's going to be on this jet. It turns out it's just him and I. And so we get, I'm like, wow, what's going on? It's like, I'm like,
Right.
you don't have to bring me to, to the jet to fire me up in, 30, 40,000 feet up in there. So we
Right.
get,
Drop your dumb tail from the sky.
right. So we get on the jet. and this is a true story. We get on the jet, and he said, so we're getting ready to take off. So and on the jet is everything, all kind of food, all kinds of everything on it. So I'm trying to be cool, act like I've been there before, but at,
Right, right.
at the same time, I'm like, there's some big lobster over there, some shrimp over there. I'm like, wow, this is nice. I got my leather seats, I got plush leather, all kind of
Right, right.
TVs on it, all kind of communication equipment, et cetera, et cetera. So he said, so you're probably wondering why it's just me and you. And I was like, Absolutely. And so he said, so as we were taking off, getting ready to head out to Sunnyvale, California from outside of Chicago, he said, the reason why I got you on this plane, because what I want to share with you is something that most of us never talk to you guys about. So 2 words, most of us, okay, meaning mostly Caucasian white men.
Right.
And you guys, I'm sure everybody that's probably listening could refer with, kind of get the meaning of you guys, is meaning
Right.
us African Americans or people of color.
Right.
Never really get a chance to understand how we operate. And so I got you on the plane because it's going to be my word against your word. I have no idea how you may react to what I'm about to say to you. But what I want you to know is when I spoke with you and I came at you at that meeting we had, it was all by design. I'm like, why? What do you mean? Like I wanted to see, and I'm kind of skipping through a lot of the things here, but it basically is I wanted to
Right.
see, I wanted to see how you would react. I wanted to see if you would stand up for yourself. I see so many of you guys out there that are so motivated to be to get ahead that you will allow anything or if someone to do anything or say anything to you in order to get your stripes, okay, in order to get your where you feel like you belong, rightfully belong. And a
Right.
lot of you guys depend on succession planning. A lot of you guys depend on the affinity groups like the African American group or the Hispanic MBA group. That those groups are going to allow you all to be in a certain be a part of certain conversations. So as I'm listening to this, I'm like, I can't believe I'm hearing all this. So he's like, so the what I wanted you to know is that it was a test, and little did you know that at that time I saw you got promoted to the president of this business unit. And this business unit happens to be the biggest business unit in Motorola. Motorola is probably at that time, it was about a 50, 60, 55, $60 billion business. So one of the biggest business units in the world. And I was certain he's the number 2 man in control. And so he said, what I wanted to do is to see if you would stand up for yourself. I wanted to see, because most of you guys that try and aspire into the next levels, you lose a sense of who you are and what you're all about. And how did you get to that point? And some of you guys even change your voice. You even change your voice. Now, this is interesting coming from a white man. This
Yeah.
white man is assessing and able to have been around enough black people to know, and if we're all real, we all know some people. And just because to them, just because we change our voice means that we're trying to be like them. Now that's how they accept it. Some of us just may talk proper, all right,
Right.
and so there's
Right.
nothing wrong with that. But I to you from his perspective, okay. And so his thought process was that even some of you guys try and change your voice to be and to feel like you're more accepted with us. What really inspired me to want you on my team was to know that you stood up to me, because I'm trying to build a team with this new role that I just got. I don't want yes people around me. I don't want people to just tell me what they think I want to hear in order to because that doesn't do me any good. And so I've also been inspired in my life by 2 African Americans. And it's like, wow, this is really getting crazy. It's like, so,
Right.
he's like,
Right.
I said, so what it means? He's like, there were 2, and now keep in mind, we're 30, 40,000 feet up in the air. We're on the plane talking about this. And
Okay.
he said, there's 2 African American men. Because no, that came about. I asked him, I said, so why me? Why me? He said, well, there were 2 African American men in my life that inspired me. right? What most of my white counterparts don't know is that me too, I grew up poor. I grew up with a single mom, all right? Because of my white males see me, they see Wharton, they see the Wharton School, business school. They see Harvard. They see all those degrees. But what they don't understand is that I had a single mom that raised me, and then so I had two African American men that sowed some seeds into my life that inspired me to not do bad things because my mom worked all the time, and I was out in the streets getting into trouble, and these two African American men owned a boxing gym out in New Jersey, and they just took me in, and they made me help me become more disciplined, and I was so appreciative of that because if it wasn't for men, no telling what I would have done. Okay, yeah, I was smart. Yeah, I had I kind of referred to him as Rain Man. If anyone ever seen the movie Rain Man, he was half genius and half crazy. So this man was certainly fit the bill. So that experience that he had always inspired him to want to do something and give something back to a minority because those two men changed his life to the point where I thought it was BSing down the road. He even donated money back in New Jersey to name a school after these men. So he put up hundreds of thousands of dollars donated so this school could be named after these two men. So so as he's telling me this is the reason why we're on the plane because as I said it's my word against your word, and this is stuff that we would never ever talk to you about how we do things, how things go down, how decisions get made, how there are meetings before meetings, okay, that the meetings before the meetings proceed and the decisions are made before we actually get into the meeting that we're supposed to be making the decisions in. You understand what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah.
You guys are never exposed to those things. And what I want to know is I want you to know is I want you on my team. And what you need to understand that there are consequences for that. There are good consequences, and there are consequences that just happen in the life of corporate. So explain. So what he meant by that is that, for example, he talked to me about the difference between mentors and sponsors. He said, "What I'm offering you is not not to be your mentor, but to be your sponsor." And then so your mentor is someone is going to provide coaching, provide guidance, help you prepare for an interview. Sponsor is someone that's going to say, "That's my guy. That's my person for this job." And oh, by the way, for example, give you an example. When he left Motorola and went to Dell, typically you would go through an interview process where, particularly people of color, you're going to go 2 and 3 times. I interviewed one time, and I interviewed with Michael Dell, and I interviewed with no one else. And my salary, my sign-on bonus, I had a sign-on bonus of about $300,000 sign-on bonus.
Wait. Everybody stop. Everybody. Say it again. You had a sign on for what? Of how much?
I had a sign-on bonus for about $300,000, a little bit over $300,000. I had a golf membership at a country club out at the place that we built its home out in a place outside of Texas. Dell headquarters is in Round Rock, Texas, and built a 10,000 square foot home out in Lake Travis. I had everything. Okay, but my point here is not on the material thing. My point is on the process of how they do stuff. And so trying to help people understand the difference between the mentor and the sponsor. And so as the sponsor, it's a 7-figure salary, total compensation package. But because of the fact that he sponsored me, I only had to see one person. I didn't have to go through all of these interviews, all of these parading me, come back here, come back for the next round of interviews.
Right.
That's the process that they typically take us through. But how they do it, if they bring in someone in that they want, they don't have to go through that process. They don't have to go through. And if they do go through several interviews, you can bet it's just a formality. It's something to make it look like it's a competition for the job, but they've already made the decision. And so that's the difference between mentors and sponsors. And he wanted me to kind of understand that he was offering me something totally different from what I ever even thought about. I always thought the name of the game was mentorship. All right. And I always thought the name of the game was, if I outwork you and I outsmart you, I'm going to get promoted. That's not how the game. We could be the smartest. We know we work harder, okay, because of who we are and how we were raised, but that still is not a deciding factor. And then so he talked to me about the difference between the electoral vote and the popular vote, and it's like I want you to understand that a lot of minorities spend their time on focusing on the popular vote. And the popular vote means, if you think about the election many, many years ago with Al Gore and President Bush at that time, first time the whole popular vote thing ever came into play is when Al Gore won the popular vote, but he did not become the president of this country due to electoral vote, which is a lot less votes than a popular vote, okay? And so his whole point from a business perspective is that sometimes we get so concerned on trying to please and make everybody happy, but when you take a step back and look at your career, there's only one or two people that can really influence and impact your career to getting it to where you want to go. And that's what he called is the electoral vote. And he said, what I'm offering you is an electoral vote, not a popular
That's
vote.
powerful.
Okay. And so
Yeah.
And so the question that you asked early on was, what were some of the events that allowed me to know that I was in rarefied air? One, no pun intended, being 30, 40,000 feet up in a private jet, I'm certainly up in rarefied air, but from a meaningful perspective, from a experience perspective, hearing how he explained and what he shared, and he said that like the reason why I'm sharing this with you on this plane is because you can't record what I'm saying. You can't, if you think this is racist or whatever, you can't go and call Jesse Jackson or Al Sharpton, because no, he said these names for real. I'm being serious because it's just my word against your words and against your word. And one of the things that you should understand is never dance between two elephants. So what do you mean by that? Because if you dance between two big elephants, you might get crushed. And what he was saying is that, if you choose to make this a big deal, then it's going to be my word against your word. And I have my word, and as I have a whole corporate HR machine, but that's behind me. And you may get your story out, but at the same time, it's my word against your word. And I think we could understand how that would end. So those are two major events that changed that made me really know that while I was in rarefied air.
And man, that's amazing.
Two stories that has changed and really guided the way that I lead and the way that I, even in my right now, I've transitioned from corporate world to entrepreneur world, where I'm the CEO of a company called Pursuit of Hope. It's a whole different background from the corporate world, being executive into an entrepreneur, and that's a whole different segment that you can do down the road. Transitioning from corporate to being an entrepreneur, it's just huge differences there, and success in one area doesn't necessarily equate to in another area. Is totally different thought process, and that's something that I'm more than willing to share about my experiences.
Those are amazing stories. And so I have like two more questions for you. So that we're talking about imposter syndrome today. Essentially, that's just the feeling of inadequacy, or that you're somehow out of place in a space that everyone else, from your perspective, clearly is rightfully placed in. So did you ever feel that way? Did you ever feel like you had to battle imposter syndrome? And if you did ever feel that way, how did you manage those anxieties and kind of keep that stuff at bay?
So I think that's a great question. First of all, to be totally candid with you, that question goes back to how I was raised. I never felt like just because I was an African American man that I was less than or better than anybody, because my mom always raised me up to. My mom used to refer to me and my older brother that grew up together as. And it sounds corny, but she was calling me my Kennedy boys. Look at my Kennedy boys. And so I'm like, my mom think of me like the Kennedy boys, and this is me at like 8, 9, 10, 11 years old. My mom, because I knew who the Kennedy boys. We're talking about Robert. We're talking about John. We're talking about some very successful people. So my mom said that in her own way to make us feel good about ourselves and to make us, where our self-esteem about ourselves. And she always taught us that we wasn't, uh, 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 we wasn't better or we wasn't worse than anyone. And so that mindset traveled with me in every aspect of my life and every aspect of the involvement of my career. Now, the proof of that is when I got tested, and I didn't know I was getting tested, as I told you all about that story, because what he had observed was a person who was true to themselves, um, and a person who had a tremendous amount of influence in the organization. That and we talk about skill sets. I didn't at that time when this man talked to me with this young African American woman in his office. I didn't have the corporate title and the big corporate type for the business unit I did, but not for the entire corporation. And what I learned that is that you don't always have to have the power or the title in the organization in order to have the biggest impact on the organization. And people, and this person recognized that, but because of the fact that I stayed true to who I was, and that I didn't compromise. And if I can give to people who are aspiring and trying to, and they're in a corporate position, they're struggling, they don't know why they're not promoting. Shameless plug here, my book, How to Play the Game at the Top, is a book that's out on Amazon where people can go and read more, and pretty much you're going to hear the same stuff, but in a lot more detail about what I'm talking to you guys about your career and how to progressing in your career. That to be true to yourself, never ever compromise who you are just for money or just to get a title or just to fit in, because it may pay off for you short term, but the thing that I can do and look back at my experience in corporate, and say that I'm very, very pleased with the decisions that I made and why I made them. Because there's nothing worse than feeling like you gained something at the expense of losing something.
Hmm. Man, that's amazing. And this is really powerful for Norris. I really appreciate this, man. I was gonna ask you if you had any plugs, but you plugged your book, the Amazon bestseller, How to Play the Game at the Top. And I wanted to reinforce that because, as you know, I read it some years ago. Great read. So, guys, we will have the things that we referenced in this conversation during this podcast. We will have all those things. So make sure you actually look at our descriptions. You will see a link for How to Play the Game at the top in the description. So you can go ahead and check that out as well. Man, for Norris, I just want to thank you for joining us today.
Hey, thank you guys for being able to allow me to be a part of this, what I really believe is a groundbreaking show. More importantly, is just thankful to you guys to want to put together a podcast like this here. And so you guys could be doing a lot of other things besides trying to educate and make people aware of the challenges and opportunities as they grow and stride in their career. And so I thank God for you guys having the vision to put together a program like this.
Man, thank you, Norris. We're going to go ahead and take a break. When we come back, we'll have Ade back in the studio. We'll talk about this discussion, and then we'll continue on with the show.
And we're back. Yo, that was a dope interview.
Yeah, I liked it. Fenorius is a really good guy.
Yeah, and when I listened to the story, at first I thought to myself, like, wow, this is a really, really unique story, like a great journey. Yet at the same time, so much of it resonated with my own experiences, like even now in the earlier stages of my career, you know?
Absolutely. I was glad he was able to make the show. Really, really interesting stories. And I hope he comes back. It was great.
For sure. Okay, so now let's get into our next segment, which, you know, I kind of enjoy. It's called Favorite Things. It's where we talk about what our favorite things are these days. We, you know, big up yourself a bit.
Absolutely. Okay, well, let's go ahead and get started. I'll start first. You didn't invite me to start, but I will start.
The floor is yours.
Thank you. Okay, so, yes. So my favorite thing right now has to be mumbo sauce.
Hey.
Yes. No, listen. So for those who don't know, for all of my Southern gentlemen and women in the audience listening in, listen, mumbo sauce is like this sweet, spicy sauce that originates out of the DMV. And yes, so Taraji P. Henson, our favorite cousin, our favorite big cousin, favorite auntie. She was on First We Feast, which was Hot Ones, hosted by Sean Evans. Shout out Sean Evans, Hot Ones, all y'all. Anyway, she's on the show, and one of the first wings she eats is covered in this stuff called mumbo sauce. And so I'm fast forwarding. First of all, I did not taste the mumbo sauce. First of all, I heard about the mumbo sauce on the show. Let's be clear. Then I was like, maybe. I don't really know. Whatever, cool. So then, you know, because the feds are always watching, I get on Facebook and I see a mumbo sauce ad. And I'm like, what is going on with this mumbo sauce ad? And the mumbo sauce ad was literally, it literally said this. It said, Taraji P. Henson endorses mumbo sauce on Hot Ones with Sean Evans. You like Taraji P. Henson. You should buy mumbo sauce. I was like, golly. I mean, I was kind of creeped out that it was so on point. And that it was watching my activities. But at the same time, I was like, well, dang, I mean, you are right. I did like Taraji P. Henson in that interview, and I am a Taraji P. Henson fan, and I do like sauce. Let me buy some. So I bought 3 bottles of this mumbo sauce.
Wow.
I know, right? And I'm on my last bottle, but listen.
Judging you.
Don't judge me. You know, you can judge me. That's fine. It's delicious. I actually will put up with the scrutiny. It's great. I put it on everything. Anyway, so I got a 2 for 1. So my other favorite thing right now is this upcoming Captain America comic, because I love comic books. And so there's a new run starting with Captain America, and it's been written by the Don, Ta-Nehisi Coates. So those are like my favorite things right now. What's up with you, Ade?
So first of all, it's Ta-Nehisi Coates. I just wanted to hit you with the well, actually, one time.
Wow. Golly, I'm embarrassed.
I can't let you be out here just like mangling his name, you know?
That's true, though, because he is a hero of mine. I don't even know how to say his name. That's a great point. I would also...
I have my gripes with him, but...
Do you really? Okay, we'll talk about that another time. Go ahead.
All right. That's random, by the way. I want you to know that that's like the weirdest. Oh yeah, by the way, I'm rocking with mumbo sauce for the week. So my 2 favorite things this week, and I don't know why we're sticking to 2, but it's probably for the best because I'm indecisive. So
right.
So currently, actually, literally, you know how when you're on the internet and they're like, what's to the left of you and what's to the right of you?
Yeah.
To the left of me is this book. I don't know if you can hear it. It's called Children of Blood and Bone by Tomi Adeyemi. And as a voracious reader, as a longtime lover of the written word, I can tell you right now that she can have all of my coins. Like, she can literally have
all of them,
every last bit. You know why? Because this woman can write her booty off. Okay. Are we allowed to even say booty?
This is a clean show. Keep it going. Go ahead.
Clean show. My mom might hear this. All right. But yeah, like, if you are looking for a new literary suggestion, if you need a new book, if you are a consultant and you're traveling 4 days out the week and you need a book to take on the plane with you, it might really only last you, depending on how fast you read, 2 trips, but it's absolutely worth it. And I think my second favorite thing is I've been sick this week, and anyone who knows me actually knows that I have a deep and abiding love of pho. But it's just like skyrocketed to the top of my absolute favorite things this week because my word, okay?
It's good though. Pho is good.
It is so good, and I was down for the count, but you know, pho and lemon ginger tea really held me down. So those have to be my favorite things for the week.
That's really dope. Now, do you have any shout outs?
Yes. So shout out to us, first of all, because I feel like we're dope.
Hey.
We put an amazing thing together, and even if, you know, this is just us talking to ourselves, this is still like one of the dopest projects I've been on. Yo, we put this whole thing together in less than a month. Bask in how amazing that is.
No. Like, no, I feel the exact same way. That was going to be my shout out too. Like, shout out to us. Like, straight up. Like, this is great.
Shout out to the team.
Shout out to the team. Shout out to Ola, of course, you, Ade, myself,
Perrin.
Latricia, and Perrin. Like, we got a team of 5, and like, they're all going to be on the show. They're all going to be, they're all leading and participating and like heavily involved because it takes a lot to get this machine up and going. And so, yeah, no, absolutely.
I vote we get snapbacks actually, because I realized that I have like a serious dearth of snapbacks in my life. So like
that's what's up.
Let's get some snapbacks.
You know what, man? Let's do that. Let's do that. We should like we need to get some Living Corporate snapback merches. Yes,
Bet.
Let's do that for sure.
Bet.
All right, y'all. Well, thank y'all for joining the show.
One more shout out.
Go ahead.
I have a new nephew in my life. His name is Halim, and he is the absolute like brightest star in the night sky right now, and I'm just so proud and so happy to have him. Sorry, proud auntie moment.
No, that's dope. That's dope. You know what? In fact, let me go ahead and shout out my nieces and nephews one time. Hey, we can go ahead and put them on. Shout out to my nephew Aaron, and then shout out to my niece Elena. And they are absolutely wonderful. So, yes, that will actually be the hashtag for this show. Auntie Uncle Swag.
Hey.
Hey.
I feel like that's the lamest thing we said all call.
Thank y'all for joining Living Corporate. This has been Zach.
This has been Ade.
Peace.
Living Corporate is a podcast by Living Corporate LLC. Our logo was designed by David Dawkins. Our theme music was produced by Ken Brown. Additional music production by Antoine Franklin from Musical Elevation. Post-production is handled by Jeremy Jackson. Got a topic suggestion? Email us at livingcorporatepodcast@gmail.com. You can find us online on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and living-corporate.com. Thanks for listening. Stay tuned.